Yes, good evening and welcome back to the Football Tribe YouTube channel. Robert Kesakos is your usual suspect. It's good to be back this late Wednesday evening. Yes, so late Wednesday evening. About 7 minutes to the top of the hour. That's 6 p.m. That we are coming to you live from Kampala, Uganda, to discuss some of the latest news in as far as the transfer window is concerned, because it looks like Manchester United are making the moves, all for the right reasons. And yeah, so I figured we should get on here and discuss what's the latest from the Manchester United camp, because we are getting some big news that they are prioritizing a deal for Benjamin Sesko. So that's what we'll be discussing and a little more in this late evening's broadcast. Hi, LFC. Good to have you back. I hope you're doing well. How is your Wednesday treating you? I hope everything is okay on your end. Hope everything is working out well for you on that end. But yeah, it's good to be back. So we all know that Manchester United are in the market, searching for a striker. And okay, I'm going camping tomorrow. Okay, looks like you're enjoying your summer really. Family dinner, movies, and everything. Looks like your summer is going really well. So we wish you the very best of luck on your camping trip. But yeah, um, we all know that Manchester United are in the market for a striker this summer. But it looks like things have, of course, not gone the way they had hoped, because if they had gone the way they had hoped, they would have landed the services, of Liam Delap, because he was their priority target going into this transfer window. But Chelsea beat them to the punch because they offered what Manchester United cannot promise any striker out there at the moment, which is European football, because they do not have it. You can't promise what you can't give, So basically, that's it. And that's how Chelsea won the race to sign Liam Delap, the 22-year-old England, centre forward from Ipswich Town, also who came through the ranks of Manchester City. And of course, in recent weeks, we had reports that the manager in Ruben Amorim would have preferred getting a Premier League proven striker, and that's why they were considering solutions like Oli Watkins and Nicholas Jackson. There were wide rumors of Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Carl Wilson, who, excuse me, now looks more inclined to be joining Everton. Sorry, yes, West Ham. Sorry, yes, Carl Wilson is a target for West Ham and things of that nature. They've been linked with the potential move for players like Moises Kean, of course, Victor Osimhen, who is now joined, Galatasaray, and things like that. So they've missed out on all those targets. We had some reports linking them with the potential move for Dusan Vlahovic at the time when it was widely reported that Juventus are interested in signing Jadon Sancho. So, none of that has really yielded to any fruition up to until this stage. But according to the latest reports, and this is according to the Athletic, David Austin says Manchester United prioritizing Benjamin Sesko if striker signed this summer, 22-year-old and now preferred option for Manchester United. Plus, informal contact made with RB Leipzig, Slovenian international, also remains top target for Newcastle United. Newcastle United pursuit continues. So that's what we are getting at the moment. And Newcastle remain in the West, but Manchester United are prioritizing the signing of Benjamin Sesko. He's a player that we've got to speak about in the morning in regards to our assessment of where Manchester United's priorities are in regards to the options they already have within their ranks and what is available on the market. Of course, they had interest also in signing Hugo Ekitike. They made, concrete inquiries to enter at Frankfurt at the time. But Liverpool beat them to the punch, the same way they beat Newcastle to the punch for the signing of the 23-year-old, the 23-year-old French striker. Hi, Dave. Kenya is here. Dave's Collection TV. Hi, Dave. How are you doing, my brother? How is Kenya? Are you guys really looking forward to that game against DRC Congo in the African Nations Championship? Chan, what's the mood in Kenya? I know that game is coming very soon. I think on the 2nd of August, which is next week practically. Actually, not next week, but on Saturday. Yes, on Saturday. How is the mood in Kenya? How is the environment that side? So when you look at those options, of course, that those reports have been further emphasized by Fabrizio Romano. Says no changes yet on Alexander Isak, Benjamin Sesko sagas. Isak wants Liverpool. The contract has never been an issue. A bid ready, but only if when Newcastle opens doors. Manchester United and Newcastle both in active talks for Sesko with the player camp, and Leipzig. It's up to Benjamin Sesko to decide where he wants to play. But also, we have an update on Alexander Isak, which is all tied to this Benjamin Sesko move, particularly for the side of Newcastle and what it would mean for Liverpool. And that update has come in from Sky German. Sky German is Florian Plettenberg, who says that Alexander Isak has already reached a verbal agreement in principle with Liverpool over a contract running until 2031. So essentially, that would be a 6-year deal. Then Isak wants to make the move to Liverpool as early as this transfer window. The clubs are in contact. His salary at Liverpool would be similar to that of Hugo Ekitike's. Now, that part, I wouldn't be inclined to believe. I wouldn't be inclined to take it for what it is. Newcastle are still pushing hard to sign Benjamin Sesko, but Manchester United are also in the race. Now, this reminds me of the argument that Ben Foster was making on his podcast, the cycling rookie or the cycling goalkeeper, and says, how on God's green earth do you sign a player worth 90 million pounds and they are only earning 100 grand a week? That the best should be 150 grand a week. So I do not know what kind of wages FTK is on, but there is no way you're telling me that a Premier League proven striker like Alexander Isak, 25 years of age, with 2 years more experience than Hugo Ekitike, would command the same wages as Hugo Ekitike. I do not see that. I do not see that, because if Liverpool are to land the services of Alexander Isak, he's not going to come cheap. He's going to come for no less than 120 million pounds, and it could be way higher than that. So if you have Hugo Ekitike was come for a combined total of 79 million pounds, 69 of that being the guaranteed fees, plus 10 million pounds in expected add-ons, there is no way you're going to convince me that a player that is going to cost nearly twice that is going to be commanding the same wages. I wouldn't buy that. So that's where I would want to disagree with Florian Plettenberg, those reports. Of course, he goes on to say that Manchester United held concrete talks with Benjamin Sesko during RB Leipzig's training camp and also on site. As reported, there is and was always a feeling that Sesko would choose Manchester United over other current options. Christopher Vivell is very eager to bring in Sesko, and Newcastle representatives were also on site to discuss a potential move for Sesko. Talks ongoing, a decision soon. That's according to Sky German. So, in as far as this saga is concerned, Newcastle will not, and I've said this before, we had the same conversation, I think, in the morning, if not last night, that Newcastle are not going to be sanctioning any deal. And I think we had Dennis Jukes, the Newcastle fan, on the channel from Australia, reminding us, we were having the discussion and we were saying, there is no way Newcastle are going to sanction a transfer for Alexander Isak if they are not sure of, a plausible replacement, a Benjamin Sesko, a Yohan Wissa. And my argument was that even if they were to sign those players, I still wouldn't let Isak go this summer. I would rather let him go the following summer. And given the kind of responsibilities that Newcastle will have going into next season, you're in the UEFA Champions League and things of that nature. You're in the Premier League, you want to compete in the Premier League and the UEFA Champions League so that you can qualify for the same competition at the subsequent season. That's 2026-2027. And the only way you almost guarantee that, the keyword being almost guaranteed, your qualification back to the UEFA Champions League is you uh, retaining some of your big players, and those big players do not come any bigger than Alexander Isak. They do not come any bigger than Bruno Guimaraes. They do not come any bigger than Fabian Shah, Steven Botman, Dan Ban, those kinds of players really that form the spine of that Newcastle team. So really, it's going to be important how they behave. If let's say they were to learn the services of Yohan Wissa, he's a mere addition to what they already have. I do not think he would come in as the primary striker in that case, even though he's capable of being that at the age of 28. So let's wait and see how this whole saga will develop in the coming days. But that's the latest. But back to the whole conversation regarding Manchester United. For me, uh, it, for purposes of the future and the potential that lies in the player, for Benjamin Sesko, I do understand the attraction in the player. But like I said, he doesn't appear to be any different in terms of profile than what they already have in Rasmus Højlund. But also mentioned uh, Joshua Zaxi. And for me, this also comes as a pity for a player like Chido Martin Obi, because if Man United are looking to bring in a striker, that pushes you further down the pecking order. And United are not going to be in many competitions with the exclusion of them being in Europe. And that means your playing time is going to be limited. Are you going to wait for the Carabao Cup, for which you get to play once in a month? Are you going to wait for the FA Cup that comes in January? Um, and yet, if and this is a big if he had stayed at Arsenal, I do feel that his development by now, in terms of being a Premier League striker, would be maybe one step ahead of where it is currently. Last season, he made 7 appearances in the Premier League for Manchester United and didn't score any goals. So nothing against him really, but the more you keep hearing these reports of Oli Watkins, Nicholas Jackson, Benjamin Sesko, you can't help but feel for the 18-year-old Chido Martin Obi, the young striker for at Manchester United, who they acquired from Arsenal. So we're just going to have to wait and see how everything will be in as far as the coming days are concerned. Um, excuse me. So now that a contract is already agreed in principle, like I said, for Newcastle to start listening to offers is only what will prompt Liverpool to make their first formal bid. They are well aware, it is well documented, it was a formal notice when Liverpool expressed their interest in signing Alexander Isak, who Newcastle insists is not for sale. But we know how the transfer window goes. Sometimes the player wants to leave, there's not much you can do. But also, you can also choose to close that door and say, not today. You're still under contract, and pretty much Ed Howe said that about the scenario that the player is under contract with Newcastle. They do have a fair share of responsibility and or a say in what happens in the future. He didn't entirely say that they have it is well within their advantage, but he said they have a say in his future. So we are waiting to see what that say will be. The Yellow Duck Sub, good to have you back on the podcast. So essentially, for me, this again, I'll say it. You signed two number 10s in Matthias Cunha and Brandon Bumo. Of course, one to play off the left wing and off the other to play off the right wing. You do have Bruno Fernandes. You do have Rasmus Højlund, Joshua Zati, Chido Martin Obi, and then you're in the hunt for another striker. So that pushes at least one of them out of the door. Do you think Neymar will join Inter Miami? Not at the moment, maybe, because I know he stayed at Santos to try and sell them. Santos is not really doing well in the Brazilian Serie A. So we can't rule out anything because it's a deal that would commercially mean more, I think, to Inter Miami as well as the Major League Soccer as a whole. But for now, I think he will step up at Santos. So, what's Neymar's clause? Clause as in Modi's clause, or what do you mean by Neymar's clause? I didn't get that question well. When you say Neymar's clause, what are you trying to refer to? 2.4 pounds. What's that supposed to mean? Guys, I'm trying to understand what you're trying to imply, But it's basically not looking pretty. But he stayed. I remember he was being linked to a potential move to one of the teams that was going to be at the FIFA Club World Cup, and apparently he had turned down that, had to stay at Santos. But then also the other thing is that Carlo Ancelotti has told him he needs him to get fit. He needs him to be having game time so that he, because for him it's going to be crucial to his Brazilian squad that will feature at the World Cup, FIFA World Cup 2026 in the USA, Mexico, and Canada. His release is close at Santos. Okay, okay. So let's wait and see. Apologies, guys. I'm struggling with the cold, so please indulge me on that one. Then, meanwhile, slightly. So, guys, what do you think about Manchester United's continuing pursuit for a striker? Bearing in mind that they already have those names that we mentioned, Chido Martin Obi, Rasmus Holland, and Joshua Jackson. But also they've added two number 10s, one of whom who can also play as an outright striker in Brian Mbeumo, because he's sometimes played that for Cameroon. So, because for me, I feel, and I'll reiterate this, for me, I feel that if they are indeed to purchase a striker, it should be a Premier League proven striker, a player that almost guarantees goals, a player that can help these others and learn. Mukwet, will Hoyland leave Manchester United if Sesko joins? That's a huge possibility because there's a lot of interest for his services in the Italian Serie A. However, the player on his account insists that he wants to stay and fight for his place. So whether that place remains within the team remains to be seen, but he wouldn't want to leave. So, Mukwet, where are you joining us from? Where are you joining us from? Kickboxing says Manchester United are signing Jackie Lee, my balls from Japan to. That's not a deal I've heard about at the moment. Maybe I'll do a little more digging to find out. But for now, it's not something I've really heard about at the moment. Then also, so really, and by the way, Manchester United today or tomorrow, depending on how what your time zones will account for, they will be in action against AFC Bournemouth. That game is coming at 4:30 a.m. East African time in the night, the morning leading to a Thursday. So they are going to be in action over there in the USA. And then I think they'll have to play Everton before wrapping up their US tour. And then I think they'll have a game against Fiorentina before wrapping up everything to do with their preseason engagements. So you look at, like I said before, I didn't watch the full game, but from what I watched versus West Ham, I think for about 60, 70 minutes, I was really, really impressed. But also their system showed a couple of vulnerabilities here and there. But I think particularly that boils down to how players are still adapting to the whole system. They were really, really doing the counter press well, starting it with the front three that included Bruno Fernandes, Rasmus Højlund, and the other was Matthias Cunha, and then the double pivot there that was of Kobe Maino and Manuel Ugarte, and they were pushing really close further up front behind the front three to lead that press. But was every at one point, I think they failed with that bit of press, and the ball is played into Thomas Soucek between the lines, who then plays in Gerard Bowen, and that's how they went on to concede. What turned out to be the consolation for West Ham. Yeah. You say yeah, but I okay. Kickboxing says yeah, but I'm not sure about Sesko being well in Manchester United. Well, all transfers are a gamble, and like I've said, I said this in the morning. Allow me to repeat it. If I were to say to sort of, for lack of a better example, I'd consider Benjamin Sesko a prototype at the moment of the product. because in the morning we were comparing him to a player like Alexander Isak, but more significantly a player like Oli Watkins, who is equally been linked with the potential move to Manchester United, and I was saying that if you compare Oli Watkins and Benjamin Sesko, Oli Watkins is a finished product, while Benjamin Sesko is a prototype of a product. So we have this kind of striker that has done well in the Austrian league at Red Bull Salzburg. He's come at RB Leipzig and done fairly well for a striker of his age. But it's one thing to thrive at RB Leipzig and the whole another to thrive at a team like Manchester United. It's not to say that it won't work. It's exactly to say that it's a huge gamble, pretty much like it is with any other transfer. Because let's not forget, Man United had very, very high hopes when they signed Rasmus Højlund from Atlanta about 2 seasons ago. And while as young as he was this very, very promising talent of a Danish striker that everybody was really blowing about. So many teams were interested in him at the time when Man United signed him. And yet, so far, while he still has a lot to learn, he's not lived to the expectations of his buyers. You look at a player like Joshua Zirkzee, he was banging it at Bologna, and yet he's yet to adapt to the Premier League. So it is a gamble for Manchester United, one that I feel they would have avoided this summer to go for a more proven striker to guarantee a certain level of goals, because I think Oli Watkins would be a better bet as compared to Benjamin Sesko. But also on the flip side, he could surprise us and he comes in and he becomes an instant hit because he does have the potential, very good on the ball, quite athletic as well, energetic, very tall. I think he's about 6'2" plus. He's good in the air. He has that strong shot on his left foot. So let's wait and see. Then you say they really need a goalkeeper, Manchester United. Yes, they do need a goalkeeper, and they've been linked with the potential move to Gianluigi Donnarumma, Lehman Siemens, something like that, from Royal Antwerp, and all other sorts of goalkeepers. Emi Martinez, they did approach Aston Villa with a loan offer for Emi Martinez with, I think, an obligation to buy, or option to buy, but Aston Villa turned that down. So yeah, and recent reports have linked them with a potential move to 33-year-old Nick Pope at Newcastle, where Aaron Ramsdale is set to complete a move on a season-long loan from Southampton with an option to buy the 27-year-old England goalkeeper. So let's wait and see which way the wind will blow for Manchester United by the time we conclude this current transfer window that runs until the end of August. So we just have to wait it out. You also say Manchester United are signing a Japanese player, Chan Suku Mikoff. Like I said, in regards to their pursuits elsewhere, to those Japanese players, I'm not yet privy to that information, but once I find out more, I'll be sure I'll bring you my perspective to it. But at the moment, it's not something that we really heard about. Then also, I mentioned that earlier on, I can see we have Esperanca Diallo. Esperanca Diallo says hi. Hi, Esperanca. Good to have you on the broadcast. Kindly like the broadcast, but also consider subscribing to the channel. Thank you for joining us. Then I wanted to mention that Liverpool were in action today in Japan. I think were they in Nagasaki? Is that where they played that game today against Yokohama FM? It was a very, very entertaining game, by the way. A very entertaining first half, although it was, I think, goalless until when the hosts found the breakthrough. But Liverpool were able to bounce back and won that game by 3-1. Of course, so far they've played a couple of pre-season friendlies, although their last one had not ended well for them. It had ended in a 4-2 loss to AC Milan, but this time around they managed to bounce back. Ueneka was the goal scorer in the 55th minute. You had, I think, Cody Gakpo in the first half hit the upright in order to score. Then again, I saw an attempt by Florian Wirtz it had appeared to be a good attempt. It was blocked off. Then there was another couple of missed chances. I think Darwin Nunes in the second half was a culprit. But yeah, Florian scored the equalizer in that one. So he gets off the mark in as far as his Liverpool career is concerned. And then Nyoni, there's a youngster, youngster, dark skin kind of guy. By the way, he looks so young on face. On face, he really, really looks so young. I need to find out what his second name is. But he did score an impressive goal. Then Hugo Ekitike did not have the best of games. I think he would have hoped for a better debut in the Liverpool jersey, but he did start up front because Liverpool started with a 4-2-3-1 kind of system. Essentially, you have a back four. In this case, they started with Georgi Mamadashvili in goal. They went with Milos Kerkez, Virgil van Dijk, Ibrahim Konate, and Conor Bradley. Ryan Gravenberch and Dominic Soboslai were ahead of them in that double pivot kind of setup. Then Cody Gakpo, Fran Vitz, and Mohamed Salah with Hugo Ekitike leading the lines. That's how they managed to set up. But I'm trying to find the second name for that youngster that scored that goal. It really, really looks to be a beautiful goal. He does look like a very, very young kid. A very, very young kid. I'm trying to find his name, his second name especially. But I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. So it was that kind of game really. Eventually in the second half, Liverpool were the better side. They put on quite a show. But Yokohama FM or F Marinos was not a walkover. They indeed gave Liverpool some bit of challenge. I saw Virgil van Dijk at one point struggled to defend, and he was withdrawn, I think, in the second half he paved way for Wataru Endo, who came in and wore the armband and was slotted in the back line, so much to my own surprise. Then also Ngumoha, yes, Ngumoha did score that goal for Liverpool as they completed that 3-1 victory over Yokohama F Marinos there in Japan, which I think does conclude their Asian tour, unless otherwise. But so far, yes, that's a bit of it. I think they will return home and play they'll play another preseason game, possibly around 4th August, before they entertain Crystal Palace on Sunday at the 10th of August in the Community Shield. That will be at Wembley. So far that's been Liverpool. But that if that game is anything to go by, I did feel personally that Liverpool have everything to do when it comes to their defending. There's a lot of things they need to correct in as far as their defending goes. And again, we spoke about this in the morning that they do need some extra bodies in as far as their defense is concerned, especially they could use some two center backs, but also they would need another central midfielder. But let's wait and see. The market is still wide open. There could be more exits at Liverpool as well as incomings in the coming weeks or days. Excuse me. You see, JY815. It's good to have you back on the broadcast. Thank you so much for being with us this later Wednesday evening. It's approximately 21 minutes past the hour of 6 p.m. Here in Kampala. You say Manchester City are winning the UEFA Champions League this year. Well, they've won it before, so we cannot say they can't do it. But let's wait and see. I think that's a huge that's a bit of a tall order to ask of them to go and win. Last season they were really, really poor in the competition, but let's hope they can overturn. They can turn their misfortunes into fortunes this season. They remain essentially a very good team when you look at the overall squad, and of course, arguably they have the best manager in the history of club football. Of course, subject to debate or subject to personal opinion, but I think I do not see them winning the UEFA Champions League, in my opinion, at the moment. And maybe by the time we finish the league format of the UEFA Champions League, we will have known where their stance is whether they do have the cudgels to go on and win it, or they will be participating, pretty much like we expect Newcastle to participate, and that kind of thing. So let's wait and see. If you do mean them well, it remains to be seen. In the morning, we had somebody saying Arsenal will win the Premier League title and the UEFA Champions League, and are saying, wouldn't they really wish for that to happen? Wouldn't that make Arsenal fans really happy if it were to happen? So let's wait and see. They remain in the market for both outgoings and incomings. They just completed the buyback of James Trafford, who left them in the summer of 2023 to join Burnley, and he has returned in a deal worth £27 million. They had sold him for about £13 million. So that means Burnley get to make a good profit of that. But also, they have told Stefan Ortega to find where he can play his football elsewhere. Then also, they want a right back, because that right back position is one where they really need to strengthen. Over the last couple of games, predominantly last season, they've been playing there, especially in the second part of the season, and they were playing there Matthias Nunes. I remember the midfielder signed from Wolverhampton Wanderers, but I think in the summer of 2023. Kyle Walker has since left the club, and he's joined Burnley there for a modest, I think about, is it £4 million or £3.5 million, possibly rising to 5. Do Barcelona win La Liga again this year? They are very, very capable. I do consider them title favorites to defend the Spanish La Liga title, given that there's not been too many changes or exits to their squad, but also they've added a few names here and there, like goalkeeper Joan Garcia from Espanyol, bought for 25 billion euros. They've added Marcus Rashford to their attacking ranks, and yeah, yes, they've had some outgoings as well. The likes of Ansu Fati, who's joined AC Monaco on loan. They do expect to let go of Andreas Christensen to create room in that backline. I think also to create room in the squad for them to be able to register a couple of other players, because I know Joan Garcia is yet to be registered with with La Liga. So I feel that they are favorites, and number 2 are placed Atletico Madrid because of the manager they have, but also what they are doing in the transfer window. They are also going some sort of transition. They are bringing in players, very many players, but also there are so many exits. Samuel Lino, Rinaldi, who joined Sunderland. What's his name? The player that has just joined Inter Miami, Rodrigo De Paul. So there's been quite a good number of exits as far as Atletico Madrid are concerned. And I thought they recruited well by getting the likes of Alex Baina, Matteo Lotegi from Atlanta, Johnny Cardoso, and things like that. Snow LFC, good to have you back on the channel. I hope you're doing well. Snow LFC joins us from Oklahoma in the United States of America. There, he's a Liverpool fan. So thank you so much for joining us once again this late evening. It's about 26 minutes past the hour at 6 p.m. In case you're wondering, on our side of the aisle. Hi, Jonas. We've missed you, I think, for the last couple of 1 or 2 days, if I'm not mistaken. But it's good to have you back, Jonas. So, yeah, that's really the latest in as far as, transfers are concerned. But like I've told you, I think it is a significant step for Liverpool. It's been widely reported that they've agreed to personal terms on a 6-year contract with Alexander Isak. All they are waiting for is Newcastle to open that window to be receiving bids for their star player in Alexander Isak. So let's wait and see. Bayern Munich did I think announced. I've seen those pictures. The signing of Luis Diaz from Liverpool. How far do Bayern Munich go in the UEFA Champions League? I think as far as the quarterfinals and possibly beyond, I think they'll be able to mark what they reached upon last year. Remember, they reached the quarterfinals and got knocked out by Inter Milan. Another very, very good team in Bayern Munich. Although I do not know if they've been able to add in anybody's in that midfield. And then, of course, it's going to be a forced start to the season for Jamal Musiala following that leg break that he suffered against PSG at the FIFA Club World Cup. So he will miss the start of the season, I think, for about 2 months. But usually, the advantage also is that when the season starts, for those of whom the season starts in mid-August, they will play about 3 match days before we go into the international break that starts, I think, early September, around 1st September there. So those are 2 weeks off, and then they return to action. Then they will play another set of possibly 3 games or 4, and then we'll go into the October international break. And usually they tend to come thick and fast around the start of the season. And for me, I've always wondered, why do we have so many international breaks within the first 2-3 months of the start of the season, and yet we do not have any international games usually happening during the summer? I know we had the UEFA Nations League that Portugal went on to win, but for the rest of, and immediately after the season, some teams, yes, played some games in the World Cup qualifiers. Others were playing, I think, AFCON qualifiers, because in Africa we do have AFCON 2025 coming up in December. So we needed to wrap that up as well. JY8 says it's 10:28 here too. Okay. Surprise team this year in what competition? In what competition? So when you look at Bayern Munich with the likes of Michael Olise, and if you know Nick Waltmate, they wrap up that deal, because I believe it's not yet wrapped up. They've added Jonathan Tah to their ranks, the 29-year-old German defender. You look at, they still have the experience of Joshua Kimmich, Leon Goretzka, Pavlovic in that midfield. Hurricane is still well within that team. You do have Serge Gnabry. He's no longer the player he was about 3 years ago or so, but he is still in there. And then Vincent Kompany has managed to galvanize that team to play some very, very, really good football. Although I thought they do concede a good number of goals if you do attack them. In any competition, let me see. In the Italian Serie A, I do not know, for some reason. I still have high hopes in Cesc Fabregas with Como, whether they can replicate what they managed to do last season and finish above tennis, possibly qualified maybe for the UEFA Conference League. So that means a minimum of 7th place finish or 6th, around there. I think Como is going to be a team to watch. In the Spanish La Liga, I'm not really hopeful that much, but maybe because I do not think the traditional top 3 will change, so I do not see many changes in there. Celta Vigo, sometimes they could surprise you. In the Premier League, I think Leeds may not drop. They may not be relegated, but Sunderland have also recruited really, really well. They've announced the signing of Granit Xhaka from Bayer Leverkusen for about 20 million euros as a total package. So let's wait and see. In the German Bundesliga, I see a decline of Bayer Leverkusen. You think Bilbao could win the Copa del Rey? I think I do not see them winning it. And no offense to Ernesto Valverde and all the good players they do have in there. By the way, I had hoped that by this time some Premier League teams, or if not bigger teams within La Liga, would have signed Orhan Sanset from Athletic Bilbao. Very, very good attacking midfielder. I think that Sunderland will be a surprise team in the Premier League this season. The reason as to why I have reservations over Sunderland, even though they've really recruited well in as far as this transfer window is concerned, is particularly because sometimes managers struggle when their teams over recruit so many new players. They tend to struggle with the setup of that kind of team. But with them, they do have some Premier League experienced players. When you have a player like Simon Adingra, when you have a player like Granit Xhaka, is not going to be new to the league. You look at that and they remain in the market. There's a goalkeeper they are trying to sign. They've already agreed a deal for him. I'm forgetting the goalkeeper's name, but you look at it overall and can't help but wonder where that leaves them as a whole. Because sometimes, like I said, when you over recruit, we saw that with Nottingham Forest. You remember in their debut campaign, they bought about 21 players and they were battling relegation when they were still under the charges of Steve Cooper. Then the subsequent season, it didn't change much until they sacked Steve Cooper and they brought in Nuno Espirito Santo, who saved them again from relegation before they became the team that they were last season, finishing as high as seventh. So uh, those would be the reservations that I would have about the Sunderland team. And from some of the things I've been reading about them, they did not look like a team that were prepared to come to the Premier League. I think in any case, the team that they beat in the playoff finals in Sheffield United would have looked on paper looks better prepared and maybe to be in the Premier League than Sunderland as we speak. But you never know. You never know. If everything they've done in this transfer window does click for them in terms of the players that they've been able to recruit, including Habib Diarra from Strasbourg, who comes in as a replacement for Job Bellingham, who left for Borussia Dortmund. There could be one of the teams to beat as far as a surprise package is concerned. Watch out for Leeds too. They got a very attacking team. Yeah, Leeds have always been that sort of fluid team, and they are under the charges of Daniel Faki. My reservation about Leeds is that the manager in Daniel Faki likes to play that expansive and progressive kind of football, which oftentimes in the Premier League costs them, leaving lots of spaces that are exploited by opponents and they end up conceding. So on paper, I would compare Leeds United to what Burnley were in the 2023-2024 season, playing very good football, struggling to score goals, but yet conceding lots of goals on the other side, which at the end of the day saw them get relegated back with Bishop Company before he moved on to join Bayern Munich. But let's wait and see. I know players like Daniel James are still up there. Calvin Phillips want to join them. They had that striker the one who used to wear the shirt number 9. Uh, his name is eluding me. If anybody does remember him off their fingertips, kindly remind us who that striker is. Then, okay, catch you later, Snow FC. Thank you so much for being part of us this evening. Be back in a bit, okay? JY says, I think Napoli will be a surprise team in the UEFA Champions League. Uh, I'm inclined to agree with you because they're making a lot of moves so far in the transfer window, but also more importantly, they are under a manager who has never won the UEFA Champions League. And in as expansive and glowing as his CV is, I think that's something he would want to add to his CV, and he doesn't have that yet. Whether the team they end up assembling will be able to compete both in the Italian Serie A consistently and in the UEFA Champions League remains to be seen. But at least the manager's experience is not one to question. If Kevin De Bruyne remains fit, is one that will be really, really important to them. Of course, they've signed a striker called Lorenzo Luca from Udinese, initially on the season long loan for about 9 million euros. You said Rodriguez? No, he's not Rodriguez. There's another striker. I think he's called Bamford. Yes, it should be Bamford. Is it Patrick Bamford? I need to see if that's his second name. But he was called Bamford, something like that. Yes, Patrick Bamford. Yes, that's the player I was looking for. Noah Lang is underrated. Okay, yeah, maybe. So Napoli are a very, very good team. Of course, they wanted to bring in a striker to support Romelu Lukaku. Last season, they had a very narrow squad that included the likes of Billy Gilmore, Phil Billing, who was on loan from AFC Bournemouth, and I understand he's back at Bournemouth. In fact, he did score in that game against Everton. when they beat Everton by 3 goals to 0 over the United States there. So yeah, Napoli, Scott McTominay, a very, very good player last season. So let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what they will be bringing to the table in as far as next season is concerned. The Patrick Bamford, things have not been happening for him really. I can see, according to statistics here, he did play 17 games last season, scored 0 goals and 0 assists. Now that's horrible. That's horrible. But let's wait and see if he can bounce back. But he's also aging out at the age of 31. Usually that's when championship teams look to move you on. Okay. Then let me see. I need to find out in Napoli about something in terms of their squad. But yeah, of course, they've moved on Victor Osimhen, who I thought is going to be a miss for him. Giovanni Simeone, one of those. You know, I used to enjoy the Napoli of Lorenzo Insigne, Acadia's Milk. There was another player at the time. His name is eluding me. Dries Martins, you know, the Belgian international, used to be a very, very decent team. At the time when they were under the charges of Mauricio Sarri, they were very, very electric side in Napoli. But yeah, there could be a surprise package for us in the UEFA Champions League. Then, how do you think Rashford will do? I think Rashford is going to prove a lot of doubters are wrong. I think within the Barcelona system, he does stand to score a good number of goals, at least many more than he managed across all competitions in the previous campaign. So I think he will be a good success, depending on how you judge him overall at the end of the season. AC Roma also had a good season last season. Do you think they can contend for the Italian league title? No, I do not think so. In fact, I've not seen AC Roma, compete for the Italian Serie A title ever since the days of Rudi Garcia when he was at the club. Over the years, they've had some good managers, but last season was a bit of a false start to them. For them, they had was it Danny De Rossi who was their manager? Only 4 games in, got fired. They brought in Ivan Juricic, who, yes, was it Ivan Juricic? Yes, they brought him in. He didn't last long. He was equally sacked, and that's how they ended up calling on, Claudio Ranieri to save their season. And once Claudio Ranieri came in, he saved their season. He did his bit and he moved on. Okay, he is within the management ranks of the club. And now it's Gianpiero Gasperini who is taking charge of them after leaving Atlanta. He is a very good manager, Gianpiero Gasperini, but I do not think when you look at their overall player profile, those are the kinds of players that could win you the Scudetto, especially in a league where you still have, a champion like Napoli with a very winning, obsessed manager in Antonio Conte. When you have a team like, of course, Inter Milan have had a managerial change, losing Simone Inzaghi and replacing him with Christian Chivu, who was at Parma last season, and then Parma took Carlos Cuesta, who was an assistant coach at Arsenal. From what I saw at the FIFA Club World Cup, I wasn't too impressed with him, with Christian Chivu, but let's wait and see. Juventus, again with Igor Tudor, a bit of an unknown quantity as things do stand. So, but Roma, I do not know. I don't think so. I do not think they'll be as challengers as they had been in a couple of years gone by. And then you say, is PSG going to do as good as they did this year? And domestically, I expect them to even possibly do better or I think they will do very, very well. But a team to watch in the French League One, I think is going to be Olympique Marseille. It's going to be one of those teams to watch, really, going into next season. I think PSG will continue to do well, both at home and on the European scene. I think they could go far in the UEFA Champions League, although I'm not based on history, I do not think they may be able to defend the title. I do not think they may be able to defend the title. But my expectation is that they will continue to perform really, really well. They have a very, very good manager in Luis Enrique. He's one of those managers who I was having a conversation with somebody. I think that with one of our subscribers called David Melbourne Wampamba, and he was asked. He put to me a question that if Arsenal were to lose, let's say, to sack or lose Mikel Arteta, who do you think would be a potent replacement for him? And I was telling him, personally, I would look no further than Luis Enrique. Then we have considerations of Julian Nagelsmann. I think he mentioned Xavi at some point. He mentioned Wishfully, Jurgen Klopp, who I do not think he would come in at Arsenal. And also Wishfully, he mentioned Pep Guardiola at the time, but the others would be my top candidates are there. So at the moment, but yeah, for as long as they still have Luis Enrique, and look, they're trying to sign that little goalkeeper, Chavalia. They're trying to bring him in, possibly as a backup for Gianluigi Donnarumma, who has yet to upgrade to a contract. With his current contract left with just a couple of months, he's ended the final year of his contract. So let's wait and see. Then Atalanta, given the managerial change, losing Gian Piero Gasperini, who has been there for the last 8-9 years, I do not think things will do really, really well for them. They've appointed Ivan Juric to take them forward. Then AC Milan took Maximiliano Allegri. Fiorentina are going to be with Stefano Pioli, who left the Saudi Pro League side at Al Nassr to come and to return to the Italian Serie A. Then Al Nassr took on George Jesus, who was formerly at Al Hilal, where at Al Hilal they replaced him with Simone Inzaghi. So those have been some of the managerial changes. I have then expect some managers to be fired next season. Especially in the Premier League. I think Keith Andrews, he could be on cards to be one of the managers to get sacked in the Premier League. He could be, one of the managers on cards. But let's not be the anticipators of doom and gloom. But I'm really, really eager to see his tactics and how he copes with the pressure of being a first-time manager of a team like Brentford, which ever since being promoted to the Premier League in that 2022-2023 2021-2022 Premier League campaign, have done really, really well, because remember, they opened up that season by beating up against Arsenal by 2-0, and they sort of became a surprise package. Then in the 2022-2023 campaign, they beat up against Manchester United when Erik ten Hag had just come in about 4-0, which was a baptism of fire in its own measure. So they did that kind of team, and last season they did really, really well. So trying to replicate what Thomas Frank has done over the years would be possibly too much to ask. So for me, the first task for him will be to keep the team in the Premier League there to avoid relegation. If they can avoid relegation, but otherwise, it's one of those teams that I look at and I sort of feel for on whether they will really, really perform. Then we spoke about Bayern Munich. Of course, they've added Luis Diaz to their ranks, so that means more assists, more goals. And then Arsenal continue to push for Eberechi Eze. According to Ben Jacobs, Arsenal are in talks with Crystal Palace over Eberechi Eze. Palace are seeking Eze's release clause triggered or matched. That, remember, it's £60 million plus £8 million in expected add-ons. As per Palace want at least £35 million upfront in any deal, while Eze remains keen on a move, and an Arsenal bid outside of the clause is still anticipated in the coming days. But let's wait and see. how things will develop in the coming days. Okay, I think we've discussed Benjamin Sesko, you know, at great length. We've discussed Newcastle's, conundrum and things of that nature. Then the Court of Arbitration for Sport will hear Crystal Palace's appeal against their Europa League demotion on August 8th in an increased person hearing. So you remember, Crystal Palace were relegated to the UEFA Conference League from the UEFA Europa League after Nottingham Forest petitioned UEFA that Crystal Palace had been in breach of the marked club ownership rules because they are one of their shareholders in John Textor is also a majority shareholder at Lyon in France, and although he since sold off those shares to a different company, Crystal Palace did appeal that verdict from UEFA, and so we'll wait to hear from the ruling from the Court of Arbitration for Sport on regards to where Crystal Palace will be playing next season. Whether it will be in the UEFA Europa League, for which they qualified for, or it will be the UEFA Conference League. In regards to Crystal Palace themselves, I saw some comments from the manager Oliver Glasner that he had been promised some signings in this transfer window, maybe 4 or 5 players, but that is yet to happen. And he said he does hope they do not lose no players, and yet Mark Kelly could be one of those that could exit. Ability is on cards, so let's wait and see how things will transpire for the Eagles. Otherwise, he predicts it's going to be another tough start to the season if they do not get players in on time. Then Arsenal Fulham. Fulham do want to sign Rich Nelson from Arsenal, but also they want Alexander Zinchenko for about £15 million. That's been the reported fee that Arsenal could demand for the Ukrainian midfielder in Alexander Zinchenko. Let's keep our eyes on that one. Then we spoke about West Ham's desire to sign Fabio Vieira from Arsenal. Then JY says, I think Ken is going to be in contention for the Ballon d'Or next season. Wow. I think if it does win, let's say the DFB Pokal, the German Bundesliga, maybe take Bayern Munich to the semi-finals or even the finals of the UEFA Champions League, maybe even possibly win it, then he could be in contention. But also, if England does really, really well at the FIFA World Cup in 2026, under Thomas Tuchel as the new manager, he could come in contention. But let's wait and see. We all know he's very capable of scoring the goals. So, anyways, guys, it's been about 58 minutes. It's been a pleasure doing this. Allow me to wrap this one up here, and we will link up later in the night to discuss more of that, more of the same, and or any other news that will have come to the scene by the time we get on in time for our broadcast. That's if my health doesn't further deteriorate, because I'm struggling with this a bit of cold. So thank you so much, JY, for being part of this broadcast. Thank you so much, Testa. Snow LFC, it's been a pleasure. Kickboxing, always a pleasure to have you. The Yellow Diet, thank you so much, LFC, and every single one of you that liked the broadcast, every single one of you that has been part of us this evening/afternoon. Thank you so much. I wish you the very rest of your day and early evenings ahead. Bye-bye for now.